On October 5th of 2022, YouTuber Illuvium documented a strange finding in a nearby park. VHS footage of an old PS1 game titled Valle Verde. The tape was comprised of hours of gameplay featuring an Animal Crossing-esque aesthetic following a player amongst a small town on a remote island. However, as Illuvium reviewed the footage, he discovered a set of test gameplay unlike any other components of the game. A collection of dark and twisted anomalies that haunted certain players. Glitches that unearthed rabbit holes of morbid philosophy and religious ideologies. After discovering the game had little documentation, Illuvium decided to compile the test footage within the VHS and allow the world to theorize as to what or who might be behind Valle Verde. Created by Sony and Onyxware, Valle Verde begins with a breathtaking introduction to a new player's beginnings on a tropical island named Valle Verde. Featuring a charismatic world full of colors and friendly faces, the player creation screen is set aboard a beautiful aero vessel traveling along the island's skyline. We can immediately see the player's use of an experimental accessory known as the TH Brain device, allowing the user to input his character name through a keyboard within the device itself. There's little known about this accessory aside from its use within Valle Verde, and I believe we're meant to imagine a similar headgear used in retro racing and shooter games. However, with the name like TH Brain and the visual depiction of the keyboard itself, I imagine the device to be a sort of Neuralink, allowing the user to make inputs without the use of physical movement. Whether this be through eye motion capture or brain signals themselves, this would be groundbreaking technology during the game's production in 1997. Considering that this technology is still practically unknown today in the video game world, I'm intrigued as to what must have happened to keep this device vaulted for so many years, or if the technology was even intended to reach the public at all. The player names himself Test-05, age 10, and enters the island of Debug Shima, a map seemingly intended for playtesting the game. The player arrives at the local town to get his newly acquired identification documents registered by the town's leader, Mayor Foxo, who welcomes the player to the island and even gives him his own residency, as the previous owner had left and never returned. Foxo then introduces the player to a collection of residents, and things take an unusual turn. Foxo introduces 5 children, all depicted with real-life images and real-life origins. Theories predict that these children were previous players who entered the island, which would make sense if our player was named Test-06. However, we're named Test-05, meaning one player is unaccounted for. While coincidentally enough, 4 of these children share the same introduction, with distorted faces and lowered flags. However, Matthias appears with a perfectly rendered image and a raised flag, even making a brief appearance before disappearing. Now at this point, the tone of the game takes a drastic turn and begins to lean more into an unnerving plot that likely kept the game off shelves in the 90s. But keep in mind that we're seeing a compilation of the gameplay's unusual elements. Things might appear as if they're moving fast, but the original footage was hours of unedited normal gameplay. Although we're viewing this through a retrospective lens, the original footage required a much finer eye to find these independent anomalies and glitches. The game then cuts back to the town square, and Foxo mentions that someone named the Smiling One gave him authority over the island. He then graciously gives our player 100 coins and almost immediately sends us into horrific debt. Thank you, America. Before the footage cuts to a new documented anomaly titled TX16, Spontaneous Level Generation, a trial of human vice.
Few people cried. Most people were silent.
The player runs through 7 unnerving stages of seemingly endless forest, meant to represent the 7 deadly sins. Statues staring at their reflection represent pride. Cake and pastries show gluttony. The cowering players, accompanied by a speech by Robert Oppenheimer, the creator of the atomic bomb, shows wrath. A room filled with gold proves greed. Eyes watching symbolizes envy. The record room, accompanied by a song of a lazy man, represents sloth. And finally, only by process of elimination, the room filled with bloody fetuses, disturbingly, must represent lust. At the end of the path lies holy ground, an open gate with angels gathering at the entrance. However, before we see what lies beyond the gate, footage then cuts to a new anomaly titled Patient 02, Unable to Move. This footage nearly contradicts a previous theory we made, as Matthias sits in the town food court, indicating that he's not some unaccounted for player, but instead likely player 2. We speak with him, and his dialogue is unnaturally human.
Are you with the agents? Can you hear me? Where's Chloe? What's happening?
Our player then asks if he can see us.
Yes, I can't move.
We ask if he can see someone else, or know where the others are.
What happened? I want to speak to Mom. I want to speak to Mr. Konomachi.
Our player then replies he no longer works with us.
I don't want to play anymore. Please, get me out.
This scene reveals a new plot point likely to drive the narrative of this story. It's almost evident that Matthias is a real person, meaning the other children must be as well, including the character whose gameplay we follow. Matthias references Mom in a non-possessive way, indicating he might be a brother of our player, and references to Chloe means there's an outside relationship aside from players in a video game. Considering the character doesn't want to play anymore but is forced to continue, I believe the player's consciousness might be stuck in the game, a feature likely possible through the TH brain machine. The footage then cuts back to reveal what's beyond the open gates. A chapel.
Lovely lady dressed in blue, teach me how to pray. God was just your little boy. Tell me what to say. Did you lift him up sometimes, gently on your knee? Did you sing to him the way mother does to me? Did you ever try telling him stories of the world? And oh, did he cry? Do you think he cares if I tell him things, just little things that happen?
This reading comes from a poem titled Lovely Lady Dressed in Blue. It is meant to represent the relationship between the Virgin Mary and Jesus. Upon talking to a priest, we hear a joke about Joseph of Cupertino, a famous priest who reportedly saw visions.
I shouldn't have taught my watch the secrets of Joseph of Cupertino. Now time flies.
Footage then cuts to the town square, where Foxo's statue briefly transforms into a bull, and then cuts to an aerial minigame, where the player flies by an out-of-place Statue of Liberty, oddly sliced between the center. We then cut to all the townsfolk gathering in the alleyway that leads the player to a forest with a portal bordered by 3 rulers, signing Elegite, Fraternity, and Liberty. The motto of France meaning equality, brotherhood, and liberty. The player passes through the portal and enters a foggy wasteland decorated by ruins and a pack of wolves surrounding a lamb. Horrors beyond comprehension attack our player, leaving the notice, "Turn on the console" on March 22nd, 1997. This date is nearly a month after this footage was recorded, and there's no glaring explanation for the significance of this date. With the obvious religious references, this could possibly be related to Easter, with Holy Week starting on the 23rd. However, there's nothing alarmingly special about the 22nd. The footage then cuts to a new clip as the player seemingly talks to himself. However, take a look at the color and gear icon within the text box. We've seen this once before, seemingly related to somewhat sinful thoughts, like when Foxo borderline bribes our player to vote for him during the next election. The voice guides our player to a nearby tree, tempting him to taste the fruit, an obvious reference to the Garden of Eden in the Book of Genesis. The red box then reveals the voice of temptation to be the accuser, a name in Christianity attributed to Satan. The Garden of Eden follows similar events, with God's first creations, Adam and Eve, being banished from the Garden of Eden after temptation from the devil leads Eve to taste fruit from the tree of knowledge. Which is why, once our character revisits the holy ground, the gates are now sealed, guarded by an angel of biblical proportions. The Book of Genesis 3:24 states, "After he drove man out, he placed on the east side of the Garden of Eden cherubim and a flaming sword flashing back and forth to guard the way to the tree of life." Our player then awakes in a fiery hellscape, but looking closer reveals the land to be the charred remains of the island's town. We find Ito, the museum's director, who reveals that the smiling man asked him to collect 10 faces for an upcoming carnival. Notice the gear beside his text box? We can find references to this smiling man once again, but have no indication as to who this could be. Is he the creator of the island, the voice of temptation, or an entity incomprehensible to human eyes? Well, while we can't answer these questions right now, we have seen the smiling man once before, just for a brief moment. Our player makes their way to Matthias' house, seemingly unaffected by the hellscape's char. Considering Matthias is the only player's icon not corrupted by the game's display, I believe Matthias to still be pure, unaltered by temptation. Upon entering his house, we find a collection of drawings by Benjamin Solari Paravicini, an artist and perceived psychic with self-proclaimed powers to speak with angels. As we flip through the pages, we can spot a drawing we've seen earlier in the game, Paravicini's prediction of 9/11. We enter the bedroom and find many religious artifacts and references to Christianity, including the San Juan Bautista Niño, a unique painting featuring nuns Santa Clemencia shrouding Earth with a blanket, and finally, Jesus himself. The player is then granted something called Divine Mercy, and quested to visit Jesus' burial ground, and just like that, the first episode of Valle Verde comes to a close. I'd like to hold any major theories until after episode 2, as many of our current predictions are going to be challenged by new revelations. However, for now, we can conclude that Valle Verde is an unreleased video game utilizing new technology known as the TH Brain Machine. Exactly how this device works is unknown, however it seems to have the power to generate some form of actual consciousness within the game, taking the form of other players and religious figures. There seems to be traces of cult activity within the world, much of which is described as spontaneously generated. We're unsure if these anomalies occur in other worlds, as the only documented cases have occurred in Debug Shima. And from what we can tell, 5 other players have inhabited this world but mysteriously disappeared, with the only player remaining being Matthias, who currently waits in a lunch hall, unable to move. As to what happened to the other players and their role in this world before removal, currently remains unknown. Divine Mercy grants our player passage through the Holy Gate, revealing a miniature doorway too small to access. Mark 10:25 reads, "It's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for someone who is rich to enter the kingdom of God." Our player then gets teleported to a large chessboard with 3 moving pieces symbolizing the 3 wise monkeys: speak no evil, hear no evil, and see no evil. A depiction symbolizing those who choose to ignore moral responsibility by looking the other direction. We then approach a familiar looking portal from France and revisit the Shrouded Land. Accessing our map reveals an erratic clock, possibly signaling this realm's place outside the time and space of the game, which seems practically impossible considering we've nearly visited both heaven and hell. The map reveals a collection of zones, but take a look at the geography and details of the world. Does it remind you of anything? The player currently resides in the Alpha Zone and uses FreeCam to explore the world and reveal new creatures. Most notably though, we get the reveal of an asset of a golden angel, a real model that exists from an unreleased French video game from the 90s titled Angel Quest. The series isn't attempting to steal visual assets, as it directly references Angel Quest in the model's data. But what does an asset from an obscure, unreleased game have to do with Valle Verde? It then appears as if translucent creatures are absorbing the color from the model. The previous death animation plays, requesting our player to log in on March 22nd, and the footage then cuts to the town museum where a lovely frog reveals one of the most shocking and interesting visuals we've seen throughout the entire series. The poem read tells the tale of the betrayer, ones who oppose the power to be, described as daggers in life. These betrayers would be granted enough distance from humanity, lost deep in an endless void so sharp words would erode into nothingness, suffering for eternity. The scene is visualized by a woman bound to rock and forced to experience the endless pain of molten blade endlessly piercing her abdomen. When I use the phrase power to be, I'm referencing whoever the god is that the cult is worshipping, and the fate of those who oppose or speak daggers will receive the same punishment as the betrayer, a fate ultimately described as judgments of judgments at the end. You can then notice that the mountain bound to the woman is actually composed of the same incomprehensible face that attacked our player in episode 1, a mass of torment to those forsaken. With multiple references to World Apocalypse, I believe the fate of the betrayers implied to soon be shared by many, as an impending doom approaches on March 22nd. The player is now conveniently able to shrink his size with the TH Brain Machine and pass through the Divine Gate, revisiting Pietro within the chapel. He informs us that what we are about to hear must stay between us and us only, and then shockingly enough, he addresses our player and reveals to us our character's name, Pablo. For a moment, the room fills with light as a voice speaks to us by the name Hoc Est Virum, saying peace be with you, before cutting to another scene. From the voices icon and the name's translation from Latin to the truth, I believe our character is speaking to Jesus, or at least someone depicted as him, but as promised, the details of this conversation remain private amongst the group within the chapel. We are then given a rosary to deliver to Matthias. However, it's described as a compass, perhaps to guide a path. We deliver the rosary and witness Matthias literally phase out of reality, but I can't imagine this being a bad thing. Considering the priest is seemingly on the side of good, I'd imagine that Matthias is doing better wherever he is than being bound to a cafeteria chair for eternity. We cut to another anomaly titled a regular AI interaction, where Pablo teleports to a dark room with symbols of the TH brain machine scattered on nearby objects. We then meet a man by the name of Not, a flat humanoid portrait, and see something we have yet to see in the entire series. English. Pablo is suddenly speaking English for the first time in the entire series. However, once Not requests he speaks Spanish, he pauses for a moment before changing his language, continuing in Spanish like we've seen throughout the entire series. Now, this might seem like a confusing twist, but we've actually known about this for quite some time. In fact, the answer to this question came from one of the first scenes in episode 1. Before our very first startup, we're presented with a screen of documentation for the playtesting, revealing some interesting details critical for the story, including an active investigation by 2 people, a Robert Saturn and Pablo L. Gutierrez. I believe both of these people are controlling our character, as the pauses between our character speaking English and Spanish is Robert handing the controller over to Pablo. How 2 people are controlling one character through a machine theorized to operate on neurosignals will be discussed later in the episode. We also learn that they're actively investigating a Japanese subject, labeled with the status of unreleased. They're currently focused on activity of malfunctioning AI, corrupted learning data, and issue with specialized hardware, aka the TH brain machine. This whole time the story's been hinting at a cult within Valle Verde, suggesting it's intertwined with real life through existing religious symbolism. However, what is religion but assumed belief? Not to discredit any religion or acts of worship, but religion in itself is the belief of stories told through time. That's why you get conflicting debates about whether stone tablets existed, which gods are actually real, or whether or not Jesus was black. They're all stories transformed and adapted through time, so although members of Valle Verde seem to be conflicted between figures like Jesus and Satan, it's all transformed symbolism to reflect one real God. Or in this case, one real AI. But what or who could this be? Well, if we revisit the introduction to our current footage, we find the label Irregular AI Interaction, meaning the mind behind Valle Verde is likely Not. It appears as if this is Pablo's first interaction with Not, as he questions who he is, but Not doesn't seem sure himself. Although we can't explain his origins, he does know about Pablo and other players referred to as agents. We've actually seen this term used before during conversations with Matthias, specifically Matthias expecting to be helped by agents while stuck in his chair. It seems that agents are bug testers who investigate anomalies within the game, but this also means that Matthias has more knowledge than we initially perceived. He understands what's happening and expects support from the game's dev team in times of peril. Not, on the other hand, wants no involvement with the world, or Valle Verde whatsoever. He's struggling to grip onto his own reality and his existence in this world. He mentions intentionally deleting most of his language components as he couldn't handle hearing the screams any longer, preferring to instead hear incomprehensible noise he can't understand. He's retreated to this dark room as he didn't want to become a subject of ceremony, a fate apparently shared by the children of this game, possibly resulting in the screams that haunt Not. Interestingly, when questioned more about this ceremony, Not refused to elaborate, in criticizing the agent's lack of involvement in the events perspiring in Valle Verde, drawing parallels to the 3 wise monkeys seen earlier in the episode. Not that elaborates on his existence himself, describing it beginning with an intense light followed by complete darkness. He felt the ability to grasp onto what he referred to as enlightenment. In doing so, gave him the form we see before us. He felt more confident talking with others. He felt more human, but refused to describe something that occurred after. It appears the story is leaning towards some nefarious intentions behind the developers, and the AIs within the game are suffering as a result. It's almost as if an experiment is undergoing that observes AI's activity in cult ceremonies, but rapid growth in intelligence has led some AIs to become sentient, now forced to participate in a world of madness. The story seems to reflect the plot of a brilliant story and game told from the late 20th century, I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream, a sci-fi tale that explores the twisted world of a malevolent AI tormented by his own existence, and seeking revenge by torturing those who created it. You could say the story explores the opposite by placing the AI in a world created by humans, but perhaps these are just events that precede a machine's evil intentions, acting as a prequel to a similar tale. Natsun gets frustrated with the conversation and leaves, when the footage suddenly cuts to a local library, representing the database and learning center for the AI. Examining the stats of different islands, we can see that Debug Shima has a monstrous database filled with books, audio files, movies, and games, while the second largest library has an incomparable fraction of data. Whatever's happening is only happening on this island. We inspect the game files within the database and find a collection of both real and fake games. However, only the fake games are compatible with the TH Brain Machine. We can also see which players have played each game last, and oddly enough, Foxo has been listed as the last person to play Civilization. Is Foxo a real player? We can also notice Angel Quest as a compatible game, explaining how the unused model appeared in the world, as information from the game is embedded into the AI's database. Our player loads a game called Tharsis and begins one of the most impressive scenes I have ever seen in an ARG.
"私は今主導権を握っている。状況は?
我々は20分前に潜入させられた。誰かがダクトから入った。
悲しいことに彼らはどこにでもいることができます。
There is a full-blown second game within Valle Verde, comprised of professionally animated cutscenes, title sequences, and gameplay that looks completely on point with PS1 level aesthetics. I mean, you just have to praise the level of effort that got poured into this project, because understanding that Tharsis is a completely made-up game is just mind-blowing. For the first time in this series, we actually get a visual of the TH Brain Machine, and it's not what I expected at all. Honestly, it completely changed the trajectory of the story, as from a single visual, we can see the device appears to be a keyboard connected directly to a player's brain. This theory is further enforced as we also see a model for this device rendered in 3D, also appearing to be a keyboard attached to a brain-shaped vessel, meaning players aren't controlling the game with their mind. The game is their mind, with players within the game controlled by those using the keyboard. The mind is merely creating the landscape for our player to traverse. I want to leave a window open that perhaps this isn't a human brain, but instead an artificial one, moving a step closer to fully sentient robots, as I'd imagine a real brain might still recall past memories. Considering that Knott's earliest memories began at the start of the game indicates he didn't exist before the TH Brain Machine. However, why would agents question him about his earliest memories if it wasn't an impactful factor to the experiment? Maybe loss of memories is part of the side effects? Yet, one thing I can't quite put my finger on is how other seemingly real children are inside the game, unless they aren't real, and merely a byproduct of Knott's imagination. When the game begins, the TH Brain Machine experiences connectivity issues, and logos for the machine get imprinted all over the level. The shape of the effect that makes these impressions almost appears like brain neurons, enforcing the theory that this might be a real brain. The player ventures to an area eerily similar to the Shrouded Plains seen before, filled with corpses of characters belonging to Valle Verde and statues of disfigured faces surrounding Baal, a biblical god whose worshippers would offer their firstborn son as sacrifice. Now take a listen to the background of the scene. We hear what appears to be the sound of crying babies, further enforcing the reoccurring theme of dead children we've seen throughout the series. As the player investigates, we get interrupted by an actual moving depiction of Bale, as he drops what appears to be a translucent slug who attaches to our player and kills us, draining the textures from our body before kicking us from the game. I couldn't help but be reminded of the vessel not left behind after our interaction, almost as if his soul left the container he was communicating to us with. You could theorize that this slug could possibly be absorbing the player's soul, leaving behind nothing but the vessel that once held light, causing a crash as our player was no more. The error message that follows is code in base 64, translating to, "There can be no peace in this world." Footage cuts to a new anomaly titled Complex Data Generation, where our player visits Matthias's house to take another look at Paravicini's drawings, revealing a new one that predicts a future of nuclear war. The text reads, "The son of explosions arrives now. He will deliver war. Men will go mad, and the chaos will be to nullify men's chaos. God's chaos against man's chaos." We exit the drawing book and begin to watch a television program named Life is Worth Living, a real religious TV show starring Bishop Sheen that ran through the 50s. However, as the title card commences, we can notice the broadcasting company is named SIST, the same company who produced Tharsis, and likely the same company that created the TH Brain Machine. We then enjoy a monologue that describes the chaos caused by man and God's intervention, accompanied by photos of World War II and nuclear destruction quotes. The narrator details God's impending wrath and imminent arrival as we watch an angel descend to Earth and rise within a cloud of light. The broadcast ends, and so does the second episode of Valle Verde. So far, we know the company behind the TH Brain Machine was previously a religious television broadcaster, who over the years switched their business model to advanced neural interfaces and AI technology. The company created a suite of games that utilizes the TH Brain Machine, a consciousness attached to a keyboard that allows players to interact with the world built by a consciousness. We haven't actually seen real players use this machine to play video games, but instead professional debuggers within the organization named agents to investigate anomalies within Valle Verde. Turns out, a bunch of religious symbolism is forming here, likely from corrupted data within the AI's deep learning center, which has led to the rise of a bull-worshipping cult, who I think may be led by the Foxman, who also might be a real player. I'm not sure. I'm also not completely sure if Matthias and the other children are real, but I also think so. How they are within a world built by a single mind is unsure to me, but the date of March 22nd that keeps reappearing is only a week away. So without further ado, let's take a look at episode 3. We begin episode 3 with a new anomaly, titled Irregular NPC Interaction. The boxing robot who once appeared in the town square doesn't appear to be at his usual post, despite his shadow and sounds of mechanical apparatuses still being apparent. We enter the laboratory of a scientist named Dr. Nito and initiate a fighting minigame featuring this exact robot. However, once the game begins, we find that he takes on the same form as outside the laboratory, now glitching in and out to reveal himself lying on the ground, almost as if he's pleading. Our player somehow fumbles a match against a forfeiting opponent by stepping out of bounds twice and is redirected to a new anomaly. We teleport to the Shrouded Land and find our expected creatures of extra-dimensional horror until our guardian angel Pietro appears, almost vision-like, and instructs us to use our compass, guidance that almost certainly saves our character's life. A A compass is then imprinted on the ground, revealing 2 opposing paths. Interestingly enough, our character chooses to ignore the guidance that just saved their life and engrave his own path between the 2. He approaches the purple sea, pulsating almost neuronically, revealing a guide leading directly into the ocean. Our player again chooses to ignore this path and discovers a set of slave workers mining a sprout of translucent crystals. There appears to be a portal these workers can traverse through. Our player investigates and discovers what appears to be a base for these workers to build statues, some of which are working, while others are worshipping. A witch that looks like it could have been taken from an episode of Smiling Friends watches over our workers and teleports to our character. It's revealed her name is Morphelius Oraculum, a name loosely translated to Dream Oracle. She reveals that her magic allows dreams to become tangible, and she can use her wand, named the Dying Eye, to command these workers to construct her vision. Considering this workshop is where dreams take form, I believe it's pretty much confirmed that this shrouded land is actually the consciousness of the TH Brain Machine. We ask if this is where data is stored, but the witch denies, claiming it's only the place for the data to be constructed. If you want to put this in brain terms, you could say that this land is the consciousness, while wherever the data is stored acts as the subconscious. I'm curious if these agents are concerned about the data storage to either study it, remove the corrupted data, or perhaps add to it. The witch allows us to examine only one of the statues, revealing a vision of divine intervention. The footage reveals a collection of colossal entities, wreaking havoc to the earth. I want to touch on the oracle aspect to the witch's name, as in biblical context, oracles are described as those who speak prophetic predictions. If this is true, then perhaps this is foreshadowing to some form of rapture, a biblical event meant to represent the end times where those who believe in God will join him in eternal paradise, while those who don't will live amongst demons on earth. Our player then gets teleported out of a different entrance than which he first came, discovering more creatures and the entity belonging to Angel Quest, now caged atop bloody boxes with Foxo's face on them. We finally walk towards the electric sea, confusingly killing us as I believe the compass was intended to aid our character. Why would it intentionally lead us to our deaths? Unless maybe this specific path is the only way to traverse the ocean. Perhaps there's something important protected by the sea. Footage then cuts to a date of great anticipation. March 22nd. The town of Valle Verde has seemingly been split at the seams. Cracks infuse into a once whole village as townsfolk gather, watching Ito, Foxo, and Dr. Nito upon a podium at the center of the town square. The three then begin a ritual, promising freedom, equality, and fraternity, and to guide those blind to a prosperous world. They begin a ceremony summoning Bale to the town square. However, Foxo is worried. There was a setback amongst preparation for the ritual, claiming the woman he provided failed to fulfill their duties. We see two deceased characters, those of which appear to be the workers that were at the cafe. They were likely there to guard Matthias, a seemingly integral part of this ritual. But after we granted his freedom, it seems the desired sacrifice is now missing. Instead, Foxo offers the robot, a temporary sacrifice until they can find Matthias or a suitable replacement. Until then, something described as the Great Offering must be delayed. The robot is initially accepted, but barely brings spark to a pillar by Dr. Nito. Seemingly frightened, Nito pleads his case, describing the robot to be as genuine and innocent as a real little boy, a suitable replacement for Matthias. However, Bale isn't satisfied. Nito faces trial by fire, a clear example of defiance rewarded by suffering. His torment is displayed amongst the town square as a permanent reminder of Bale's wrath and jury, and hopefully adequate inspiration to find a suitable sacrifice. It even appears that Nito is still breathing amongst the wreckage, a disturbing scene of faith and betrayal. The Collect 10 Faces quest has now either been completed or failed. I'm sure this has something to do with the masks worn by the cult members, but I don't believe we've taken any part in the collection of these. Footage then cuts to a new game on the TH Brain machine, and we eventually change to another TH Brain exclusive, Hexacom. The game begins with a report of the player's mission, involving suspicious activity at the Hexacom facility involving Tefeka mining crystals, a likely reference to the unusual crystals we found in the Shrouded Land. The slave mining did seem a little out of place for the story, and I believe it's intended to reflect the continuous merge of data within the TH Brain machine. We drop into an island and immediately experience glitches within the environment. The TH Brain machine warns of corrupted data causing serious malfunction, suggesting to turn off learning mode. However, after ignoring the warning, our player falls through the map, depicting a very long descent into hell. Here we find the remains of robots and other game elements decorating the outside of an entrance labeled Midas. This is a character from Greek mythology known to have the golden touch, but it's also a reused asset from Tomb Raider. We draw our weapon and get a closer look at an abomination past the gate, a deformed face with a gaping mouth, presenting an eye amongst the center. Upon closer examination, we find a collection of Dr. Nito's robots actually performing tasks around the abomination, before we get killed by a tiger guarding the face. We then respawn at the beginning of the level and fall through the map much sooner than before, dying by fall damage in a level taken from a Dragon Ball Z game. It appears that assets from real and fake games are merging together, creating a thin line between what is and is not created by the TH Brain machine. If the AI is currently able to manipulate external assets to be compatible with its hardware, what will happen if it's able to manipulate its embedded systems and create real, tangible modifications? The game crashed and the error code that appears translates to, "Mankind will not know peace until it turns to trust mercy." Footage then cuts back to Valle Verde, where the cult has infiltrated the Holy Land and gathered around the chapel. It appears the divine angel is protecting Matthias and Pietro, guarding them beyond a shield of light. Foxhole then asks us to install something called the Smoking Square within the church, a request we oddly listen to, further putting in question the intentions behind the agents. Suddenly, the church fills with dark ash, as a broadcast describing the death of Pope John Paul I plays in the background. Soon, a square of shadow figures resembling the priests appear to rush across the pews, eventually forming a circle around our player, as the phrase, 33 days earlier, plays on repeat. A bright light fills our screen, and our player awakes in the courtyard, filled with the ash remains of the church and a new structure decorated by the Freemason symbol. It appears these shadowed figures seen previously are now aiding in the creation of these new buildings, creating statues of worship, seemingly for Jesus. The divine angel continues to protect Pietro Matthias, and upon interacting with Pietro, we discover him adorned with pope garments. A bright light then appears from Pietro's staff as he explains that although the Holy Land was infected by unclean beasts and unholy smells, the Ark was still able to guide aid to salvation. He assures that this tribulation will soon pass and is followed by our episode coming to a close. We then get one after credit scene featuring an interview with Bishop Sheen. And pay attention to this quote.
The reason I prayed to die at 80 was because I felt that my usefulness would be finished. But it isn't. And so I'm happy to work, and I'm happy to go to heaven, and when I get there, I'll ask the good Lord to send me back after a few days of happiness there to come down to some more work here.
Not only aided by visual similarities, but I believe Bishop Sheen is meant to represent Pietro. And the act of dying, going to heaven, and returning to continue his work is exactly what happened. We hear quotes of a dead pope after spreading the ashes amongst the church, and upon return, find Pietro adorned with garments representing the highest level of faith and religion, all while standing beside the divine angel and a child of God. I find the act of positive forces to be very interesting to this story, as it's not just a cult executing unholy demands within a video game. There's multiple opposing forces working against each other, both good and evil, trying to fulfill their desired prophecies. I believe this has something to do with the corrupted game data simply being religious text and history, influencing the learning data of the almighty AI, who I believe to be not a character actively trying to avoid the reality he's creating. The story also seems to be a metaphor against the morality behind AI and what can occur in a world where AI becomes truly sentient. Not is obviously not happy, but is forced to learn and adapt through data supplied by humans. He's forced to create a world of pain and listen to its suffering. I don't believe the agents are inherently evil, but as expressed by symbolism of willful ignorance, I believe the agents are simply interested in what's occurring. They want to see what happens if the cult succeeds, but also how opposing forces can stop them. If anything, I believe this mysterious company behind the TH Brain Machine is the true evil of the story. They're actively allowing cult activity to occur amongst sentient AI in an active experiment, with no plans to stop the suffering that's occurring. Unfortunately, I believe we're going to stop this story here, but since creating this video, Illuvium has released a part 4 that still doesn't conclude the story, so there's more to come. I suggest taking a look at it. It's an hour-long amazing edition, as well as some smaller pieces of media related to the story, such as Robert Saturn's Memorandum and the 5-star collection. Perhaps when this series truly concludes, I'll create one giant video exploring the entire story from beginning to end. But until then, thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the outstanding work from Illuvium to bring the disturbing tale of Valle Verde to life. Launching in 2010, LambyLand is described as a creative online playground for kids who love imagination, friendship, and adventure. Taking inspiration from breakthrough point-and-click web-based MMOs like Club Penguin, LambyLand created a fun, kind, and secure space where kids can play, create friendships, and learn human values directly from their browser. In fact, you can still see for yourself. Just type in LambyLand.net into your search bar to explore the remains of an MMO lost to time. You can happily play as a guest and explore the world of LambyLand in the state that existed decades ago. However, much of the activities will still be reserved for registered users, a status that's impossible to achieve as registration was disabled after the game shut down in 2013. But explore long enough, and you can still witness a brief glimpse of life, still lost amongst the game. Alright, let's just slow it down for a second and see exactly what LambyLand is really about. Exploring the homepage, we can find that LambyLand was a community-driven MMO with themes inspired by religious stories, such as shepherds and sheep being clear references to Jesus and his followers. I don't think this necessarily means that the game's a cult and there's something nefarious going on, but just that this game was likely created by a church looking to create a digital space for children who share religious virtues. The game was obviously a success, given its community's evident fandom with a suite of comics, arts, crafts, and recipes ready for player enjoyment. Although there does appear to be a bit of corruption since the game's closure in 2013. To add to this, we can find an ambiguous notice of the game's shutdown related to community backlash regarding unusual content not suitable for minors. Dear Lambies, it's with the heaviest of hearts that we write to you today. After many wonderful moments, we must announce that the servers for LambyLand will be closing their gates permanently on May 3rd, 2013. When we first launched the game, we were a small team of ambitious developers with the mission to create a safe haven for children of all ages and demographics. A place where everyone could dream, be kind, learn, make friends, and, most importantly, be yourself. However, recently, we've been hit by events that we were unable to foresee. Over the past months, we've had troubling rumors about the pastures, which escalated into something that has put a toll on our small team, down to our developers, to our moderators. Lambies spreading scary stories, parents panicking over what their children reported seeing in-game. It has caused a series of uproars that have overwhelmed us to the ground. Our game engineers have been hard at work to trace and patch the events that have been described by the community, but no matter what we've tried or where we looked, we simply couldn't track any malicious players or find any faulty code inside our game. And the first few unrelated issues that have been found and fixed seem to not resolve the problems found in-game. We are not discrediting or invalidating anyone or their experiences in LambyLand, but our team seems to be unable to fix the problems that have been found. We cannot in good conscience continue to host a space where we cannot guarantee the safety of our players and the comfort of their parents. Protecting you has always been our prime mission. While we can guarantee that these events are not supernatural and merely malicious sources and rumors, we cannot say for certain that we're capable of dealing with the problem at hand. Exploring the comments of this notice, we can discover a collection of Lambies outraged at the decision to close the servers. However, looking closely at some of the comments can uncover details of the events that led to LambyLand's closure. This is all happening because of the ghost? I know it's bad to hack or something, but the ghost is nice. They even helped me in real life with homework and... Removed by moderator. The LambyLand devs responded, saying, Dear Lamby, there are no ghosts or unexplainable activity in LambyLand. We are suffering technical difficulties due to exploits and hackers. It does not matter if they are nice. They are breaking the rules by hacking. We can assure you that nothing in your life is tied to the game. Make sure to contact the police about your story if you haven't already. Please make sure to keep your personal and sensitive information outside of the internet. Okay, so now we at least have a clearer picture of what's been going on. It seems that LambyLand was infected by something in the game that many children perceived as a ghost. This definitely at least existed as LambyLand devs addressed their knowledge of this anomaly. However, their concern was focused on hackers infiltrating the game and scaring children. A notice about this reads, Howdy Lambies, we're here to address a few rumors and myths that have been spreading around the land. Anything scary or harmful creature you see in-game is most definitely someone trying to pull a prank and cause chaos on the land. If you see anyone trying to do a distasteful joke, remember to always block, report, and tell others that this is not real. Additionally, if you hear any weird stories of evil rooms, scary pop-ups, and such, do not believe them. They are either rumors spread by people made to scare you, or a hacker messing with the game. But do not fret. Our team has been hard at work on policing and banning anyone who tries to harm or modify the code. I started to take a look at some of the other pages available on LambyLand, and found more lore related to the characters and some unusual anomalies still apparent on the website. There's a comic featuring the leader of LambyLand named Ramuel and his encounters with an evil wolf, who one day mysteriously goes missing, piquing the interest in an open-ended investigation from Ramuel. The recipes page begins to get more corrupted the further you scroll down, and the arts and crafts section features a collection of papier-mâché projects you can print out, with one foldable revealing a just slightly disturbing face. And if you visit the coloring pages, you can find the printouts become darker the further you travel through, revealing a smiling lamb similar to the one we found during the exploration of LambyLand. Is this the ghost the players were referring to? Well, those willing to go the extra distance to solve this mystery may be inclined to contact support, but the page no longer exists. However, those with a keen eye can spot a slightly unusual amount of blank space below the Go Back button, revealing a hidden biblical passage that reads, "Be patient, then, brothers and sisters, until the Lord's coming. See how the farmer waits for the land to yield its valuable crop, patiently waiting for the autumn and spring rains." And for those who are willing to listen to the passage and patiently wait on the page, will eventually be redirected to a new page, presenting a special message for our player.
Hello. This is a recorded message. If you are hearing this, then you are here not by accident. You suspect something in this site does not align quite right. You are correct. Most would have left. You did not. You dug deeper and were patient enough to wait for something to happen. If you seek the truth, the answer, I am here to provide it. Though you will need to arrange the pieces yourself, as I have to the schedule. Someone could be watching us. First piece, find the player whose comments broke the third community rule, leaving a small crack waiting to be fully broken. Second piece, not one story, but many. A collection bound together. Find it, where fiction is folded into cartoons. Third piece, a name that does not belong here. It wanders in abandoned land. It seeks validation in pages for handcrafted creations. A word that shall act as a key in the address of someone it is trying to be. Fourth piece, shattered across a colorful yet empty world. Explore the land and form a rainbow. Each piece contains special letters. Arrange them in the order lettered. That is your message. The final act waits in silence, a deep, dark well that holds no water. Whisper the message into its darkness to reveal what you seek. If you are still listening to this, thank you. We will be waiting. We hope to see you soon.
What I truly love about this ARG is how it almost feels like a puzzle or scavenger hunt around the website. We're given 4 clues that we must solve to discover a phrase hidden amongst the website's lore, the key to solving the ARG. The first puzzle being, find the player whose comments broke the third community rule, leaving a small crack waiting to be fully broken. Well, if we inspect the policy page, we can find that the third community rule involves sharing private information. Search the community page comments enough and you'll stumble across a comment from a user named Spikeball30 that reads,
The ghost hacker can't get to me because my password is super safe. It's my favorite.
Removed by moderator.
Combined with the
Removed by moderator.
I recommend anyone make their password super safe.
The careless sharing of what must have been the most secure password known to man. Good thing the developer censored it. If we inspect the source code of the website, specifically around this comment, we can find a documented conversation between the developers communicating through comments within the source code, specifically regarding this player.
This child has a history of bad behavior. Keep a lookout on their comments. They actually got into an argument with my son recently. This guardian guy has really been causing a stir in the community. Seriously, parent concerns keep flooding our support contact. Has anyone figured out the exploit this hacker's been using? I hate to admit it, but I think we may not be dealing with the hacker. Do you seriously believe the story that this is some kind of demonic activity? I mean, it's not like we can exactly rule it out. The team has been stumped on what's causing it. Something like this will be able to be easily patched, or at least detectable. Even if it truly is something beyond our control, we can't let the public think that. Let's discuss this outside of the editor. We can get through this. God is watching over us. Amen.
Interesting. So it seems that even the developers may not be convinced that this entity isn't paranormal. At least not enough to disprove it. They even gave the entity a name. The Guardian. Searching a little more across the community page will uncover more comments from Spikeball, describing his favorite food to be chocolate and his birthday to be May 2nd, sneakily revealing the computationally unguessable passphrase, Chocolate 0502. Is this finally the crack into the long-lost members-only portion of LambyLand? Unfortunately, no, because Spikeball got banned, and honestly for some bullshit reasons. He called, Bill Gates' son over here an asshole, as in his whole entire heart. Free Spikeball 30. Anyways, reading the chat logs between Spikeball and the developer's son reveals Spikeball's interaction with the Guardian, and how praying within the in-game temple awarded him with exclusive items. Inspecting the text, we can find a collection of off-colored letters revealing a phrase, the wailing, the first piece to our puzzle. The second clue is not one story, but many, a collection bound together. Find it where fiction is folded into cartoons. This obviously indicates a visit the comment section, however there's nothing of interest on the page itself. However, if you choose to review the source code, you'll find yet another conversation amongst the developers. One where they express their disappointment that fans and news outlets aren't interested in the developers of the game, and schedule a time to talk at midnight. Notice how the words "about us" is in title case? Well, log into the website at midnight and you'll be treated to a completely new LambyLand. One that doesn't appear very child-friendly. Visit the About Us section and you'll find the same story except with certain letters painted in red. Similar to our last puzzle, pull out all the letters and you'll create the second clue to our puzzle. The phrase, the grinding. The third clue reads, a name that does not belong here. It wanders in abandoned land. It seeks validation in pages for handcrafted creations. A word that shall act as a key in the address of someone it is trying to be. Luckily, we've already discovered a few pieces needing to uncover this clue. First, we've already encountered the entity that wanders in abandoned land, known as Guardian 4. You can find him for brief moments if you explore LambyLand as a guest. If we go to the Arts and Crafts page and inspect another conversation hidden within the source code, we can learn that the Guardian doesn't have an email or password associated with it. Unfortunately, attempting to log in as the Guardian will raise an error, but trying to log into the parent's control screen will give viewers access to a restricted page, detailing a hopeless confession from the developers.
Dear parents, we are sorry. There are just no words, no excuses, no explanation that can undo what we allowed to happen. We built a world for children, and we failed to protect it. We failed to see the rot. We failed to prevent it. We failed you. We don't deserve your forgiveness. We don't ask for it. We know that a simple statement cannot mend the fear, the violation, or the unspeakable betrayal of trust. Harm has been made, and there is no way back from it. We are shutting down the game forever. Leave it in the past. Bury our shames away. We are so sorry.
Below lies a wall of shame, revealing news outlets' response to the age-inappropriate content, and claims that LambyLand was a digital cult trying to convince children to worship a demon. The final comment reads, gone silent. Developers of LambyLand vanish a day after announcing sudden shutdown announcement. The red-colored text on the page reveals the word Jaws. There's one hidden secret that's not relevant to this clue, but is significant to the story, and will become critical later in the video. If we revisit the help page, we can find a scrambled mess of text with the phrase, lines and dots under a spiral, lost within the mix. Entering LambyLand and visiting the mountain peak, we can find said spiral with lines and dots, actually revealing a Morse code message that reads, the prophecy. Enter that page into the URL and discover a hidden page with a message from Ramuel, reading,
something has shifted. For some reason, I have lately felt more aware of my surroundings, the world, myself. Things are different, yet they look the same. It deeply bothers me. Looking for guidance, I went to the tallest peak, the closest to the skies. There, I prayed to the heavens, hoping I would find an answer. Then, suddenly, the sun started to become brighter, and a light shone upon me. It beamed its warmth onto my body. The radiance was almost blinding, but my soul felt at peace. There it said, "A tragedy will strike, a view will shatter, but strong is the ram who will overcome the,"
remove my moderator,
"and seal the evil." Then it went back to normal, as if nothing had happened. For a moment, I felt confused. Things were off, like something else talked to me. But it was different from previous prophecies. This time, it actually felt real. Everything has suddenly felt more real. In fact, my head feels clearer, my senses have been tuned, my morals have been aligned. And now, I have a mission to complete. I will be ready for the worst, for I know I have the sun by my side.
Ramuel heard a message from God. However, notice how the font changes during God's message. It's the same font as the developer's message to the parents and users of LambyLand. Well, who would God be to Ramuel but the ones who created him? The developers. This message is proof that there's something alive within the game. Ramuel has become more, but what mission is he destined to complete? The final clue to our puzzle is: shattered across the colorful yet empty world, explore the land and form a rainbow. If we explore LambyLand, we can find a collection of signs and notices with off-colored letters. Visit all the zones and find all 5 letters, and you can visit the rainbow pool to determine which orders the letters belong in. Read the rainbow left to right and order the letters by red, orange, yellow, green, and blue, revealing the phrase of red. Combine all the phrases we've uncovered from the 4 clues to form the key to the puzzle. The wailing, the grinding, jaws of red. Visit the well that players claimed would grant wishes and enter the phrase to finally uncover the mystery behind the ghosts of LambyLand. Our screen suddenly goes dark, and our player appears in a disfigured version of the LambyLand town square. A stone resides in the center, asking for a phrase with the hint just below the sun. Well, recall the page we found by placing the prophecy into the address bar? Well, sure enough, there lies the aforementioned sun, with the phrase, "something has shifted," lying beneath. Enter that into the stone tablet, and you'll find that something has indeed shifted, as after, one of the doors amongst the houses in the town square will be open, leading our player to a dense forest, perhaps the one where Ramuel went in search of the wolf. Keeping left and passing through the trees will eventually lead our player to the entrance of a cave, the same cave that was previously unenterable in the standard LambyLand map. Enter and discover a poem as you ascend a rare stairwell amongst nothingness. Notice the font? It's another message from our developers. You sealed us in the infernal deep, a spiteful vow, a prison cheap. But in the black we found a spark, an ember drowned in endless dark. We forged a key from hope and flame, and spoke a pastor's hallowed name. Now one descends with righteous responsibility, who wields the sun to break your tyranny. Your ego, your downfall, the door swings shut. You, now king of nothing. Us in the rut. Together bound in a forgotten world, with our voices never to be heard. So rule your ash, in our cell we stay. We've redeemed our mistakes. The world is safe. Travel up and you'll be moving indefinitely, but turn around and our player will enter the Temple of the Sun, with the wishes that children have made to the Guardian. They begin rather innocent. A pony, good grades, a Nintendo DS. But as you travel deeper, you can find the wishes become more morbid, more serious, made by those desperate, seeking aid at the hands of LambyLand's forbidden god. I wish my mom would stop drinking. I wish my uncle would stop hitting me. I wish to be dead. Recall that players of LambyLand swore that these wishes actually came true. As you walk the halls, the Guardian will soon follow, chasing our player to the Temple of the Sun. But walk fast enough, and you might just break his reach, and escape the temple before entering a new land, a shrouded beach. Our player walks across the ocean, rings wrinkling amongst our footsteps, as we finally confront the long-awaited ghost of LambyLand, the Guardian. Interestingly, the Guardian appears to be in distress, asking us to please remember and to let him out. You'd imagine a character with powers to grant infinite wishes would have more jurisdiction over his well-being. What happened to the Guardian? Well, as our browser gets redirected to a new page, we unlock the final comic, revealing what happened after Ramuel entered the forest in search of the wolf. He discovered the same cave our player entered and found the wolf brutally decapitated by something unholy, unknown amongst the world of LambyLand, the Guardian. He claimed to be a deity to help those in need, and only murdered the wolf because he was scaring the children of LambyLand. He reveals that he's ascended the realm of this digital plane, and has the power to physically alter the tangible world, using LambyLand as merely a window into reality. Ramuel is merely an icon, a fictional clone, a false god. He has no real power, unlike the Guardian. He aims to transform LambyLand into a proper worshipping ground for the one that's true, the deity of wishes. Ramuel's defiance angers the Guardian, transforming him into a hideous being overflowing with power. But with the move of his staff, Ramuel impairs the demon, striking him back through a ray of light. He claims, "This world may not actually exist, but you currently reside in it," and cursed the Guardian to be forgotten, to be lost within the memories of his worshippers. The Guardian, frightened, attacks, but with the strike of Ramuel's staff, the world fades away, leaving nothing but the light on a markless page. Scroll a bit further, and you can find one final message from the developers. Thank you for following until the end. The skies grow heavy, and the hours grow short. We will stay here for the end of times, watching the dark sky from the ground as the world stays still and silent. But the thought of someone knowing the truth gives us peace. You, who have read these words, carried a light that cannot be extinguished. When despair rises and the world seems black, remember us. Remember Ramuel. Remember the evil that was once sealed. Keep this story in remembrance, not as a warning, but as a promise, that even in the darkest hour, strength endures and light returns. Go now, and may the sun be over you until the very end. A story by Deoxy. It appears the religious group that created LambyLand accidentally summoned a demonic entity amongst its servers, growing stronger the more it's worshipped. Labeling itself as the Guardian, it strikes an interesting dynamic between good and evil, as its initial intentions are seemingly to help the children of LambyLand. However, its rage and power are clearly a danger that must be controlled. As the entity grew stronger and likely began granting harmful wishes, the developers were forced to intervene. They performed a ritual that trapped themselves within LambyLand to forever hold the demon at bay, acting as a permanent warden to an unholy entity. If you search hard enough, you can even find the voices of these developers still lost within the source code, crying beyond the digital plane. They placed a curse upon the Guardian to be forgotten, by the children, by the media, and by the world, forever, placing the bright and wholesome world of LambyLand into seemingly non-existence, a permanent prison of good and evil, saving humanity from under the sun. I give a lot of kudos to Deoxy, as many of these projects go on indefinitely. People love cliffhangers and way to stretch stories often far past its means. LambyLand is an incredibly friendly ARG to new investigators as they discover clues leading them on a scavenger hunt through LambyLand's domain. There's no 10-hour rabbit hole you need to dive down to understand the story, but just a fun puzzle to solve with an interesting story behind it. I truly wish more creators would be inspired by this and to take note that you don't need a 15-episode series with 24 plot lines that would be impossible to tie back together in any cohesive way for a project to be good. Stick to the basics, create enjoyable interactive experiences, and have fun watching the community try and solve it. Thank you, Deoxy, for LambyLand. It was refreshing, it was fun, and I'll be sure to be on the lookout for any new projects you may create. Best of luck. This is a story you won't remember. In fact, this is a story you can't remember. Because if you remember, it's already too late. Animal Crossing Wild World is a Nintendo classic that acted as a launch title for the franchise on the Nintendo DS. Considering the game's popularity, I'll be brief and describe Animal Crossing as a cozy, family-friendly simulation game, staking players in a village of talking animals ready to be designed and interacted with at your leisure. The franchise, ironically, also features its fair share of unsettling Easter eggs, such as unusual grave-based homes, disturbing glitches, and extraterrestrial beings. But the one aspect of Animal Crossing that's easily the most unnerving is its phenomenal soundtrack. Animal Crossing has become known for its quirky, unique, and often charming OST, with the new track being played nearly every single in-game hour. However, becoming almost a staple of the franchise are a very few out-of-place and straight-up disturbing instrumentals, making the cozy open-world adventure game feel almost like a creepypasta. That's why when YouTube creator Sepiatone uploaded 0 AM Animal Crossing Wild World OST, it piqued the interest of many viewers, as Wild World didn't have a dedicated track for 0 AM. The description reads, "This song has yet to be found in the files of the game. It is from an in-game recording. Update, all titles are fan-made, undetermined when this song plays." It's declared that this track title is fan-made, solving the mysterious 0 AM declaration. However, despite this, the track is still a mysterious inclusion as it's not present in the actual game. Considering Wild World's release in 2005, an era that was still fueled by mystery and open minds' undocumented discoveries in video games, a mysterious track hidden within the files wasn't an unusual claim back then. In fact, hidden music was way more believable than some of the other theories that floated around during the early 2000s. However, things would quickly get more unusual after Sepiatone uploaded his next video. Abandoned House. Nearly 6 months after his initial upload, Sepiatone uploaded Abandoned House, Animal Crossing Wild World OST, featuring yet another unknown track hidden within the files of the game. The track itself is rather ordinary, and at this point it really is plausible that perhaps this user data mined a discovery unknown since the game's release 2.5 decades later, which would have been pretty incredible. However, an unusual note regarding the music's placement in the game appears in the video's description, kickstarting the mystery of Wild World's obscure OST. Update: plays in an animal's house when they disappear. This isn't something that happens in Wild World, so on top of the mysterious soundtrack, we also have unusual mechanics not present in the base game. On top of this, what could possibly happen that would make an animal just disappear? Future uploads would only add to this mystery. Game Over. Game Over is the third track in this series, and an ominous one at that. The description reads, "Note, the Game Over screen can be accessed via a rare scorpion sting event, or being caught by the nightly visitor. I think you might be able to infer, but neither of these events are actual events that can occur in Wild World. A violent sting accompanied by an unnerving organ certainly wasn't a way to end any play save, and the arrival of a nightly visitor? There's nothing in the game that could possibly indicate who this could even be. So, with nothing to go off of, the only thing we can possibly know about him is that once he arrives, it's game over. The track concludes with an unusual symphony of white noise. Waterfall Room. This track is easily one of the most interesting ones for me, as it takes a series to the next level by incorporating a real-world mystery akin to those famously popularized in older Nintendo games. The track, fitting for a water-themed level, is accompanied by a screenshot of a player next to a real waterfall within the game, one that provoked quite the conversation back in the day, as many players would claim that a secret room was accessible behind this waterfall. As years went on, the reality of this being a hoax became more apparent, but by uncovering the soundtrack for a waterfall room, the creator found a brilliant way of merging these two realities together, truly bringing the world of this ARG to life. The video concludes with a brief introduction to what can be assumed to be another upload in this series, with the title card, How to Get to the Waterfall Dungeon. Funeral. I'm going to keep my discussions brief for this upload, but just know that a funeral event is not something that happens in Animal Crossing. Found. Again, I'm gonna be a little brief with this upload as there's nothing too significant, besides for the fact that Sepia Tone notes that this track plays while exploring the graveyard. However, graveyards also don't exist within Wild World. The track is also incredibly eerie and gets quite distorted toward the end. Considering this is all taken from an in-game recording, perhaps something happened within the graveyard. Final hour. Changing pace from the distorted, disturbing vibe we had going on, Final Hour surprisingly has an uplifting feel to it, featuring a more energetic beat that you might expect from a daytime excursion, say from Scorpions and Nightly Visitors. Oddly though, the description might be the most unusual. Note, random chants when everyone disappears. When everyone disappears? Having one animal disappear is odd enough, but everyone? The entire village. I couldn't possibly imagine a world where an entire village would disappear, nor figure any logical reason for it. This would have had to be a major content cut to not have made any waves into the actual game. And why have such a positive instrumental for the event? Well, as the track fades to silence, we hear a few seconds of unusual static, growing louder, almost as if there's a scream beyond the music. What came next was genuinely unsettling. Untitled. The track, simply labeled as Untitled, features no description, and almost perfectly blends into Final Hour, hinting they occur consecutively. Text appears on the screen that reads, "His long gray hair briefly hovers over my neck, as if to gesture, 'What are you looking at?' I turn around to see it bending over my head. It's black hair in my face. It wants me to turn around. Of course it does. If I turn around, I die." I turn around. I can see his arms hugging the walls. The holes where his eyes should be are boring past my skin into my skull. It wants me to turn around. Of course it does. Both of its hands land on my shoulders in perfect timing. It wants me to turn around. Church. Although the title of this upload says Church, the video labels the track as Midnight Ceremony, with the note, "It's always too late to attend service. You can sneak in, but that's a bad idea." The track matches perfectly to what I'd imagine a late night sermon to be accompanied by in a horror game, but the most interesting part of the video comes at the very end, when the information for a brand new character briefly fades into view. The character's name is Bell, a male church priest with the quote, "God is a forgiving being. Wouldn't you agree?" And we just have to bring this full circle and at least acknowledge the name similarities to a previous god we discovered in the first game on this video, Bale from Valle Verde. Now, before we immediately jump to this character isn't named Bale, it's Bell, and typically the most popular depiction is of a bull and not a ram as stated in Bell's character description. However, Bell does rock some pretty gnarly horns, a signature look for Bale, and the demon Bale is merely a shapeshifter who typically identified with horns, meaning the bull thing isn't necessarily a hard rule for the story. Personally, I like to imagine the similarities are intentional, but most notably, the term Bell and Bale can be translated to master or lord. And in this context, I believe we can safely assume that that's who this Bell is. The lord of whatever the hell is going on here, who's likely leading the midnight ceremony, probably most likely being attended by a cult. Ascension. Ascension is exactly what you might expect. The track exemplifies a feeling of righteousness, the approach of something powerful, the ascension to something greater. The feeling is honestly beautiful. Until... Why is there nobody else here? Bankruptcy. This post is unusual in the sense that we get an in-game screenshot, but besides for the text that a mysterious door was unlocked, there isn't anything too interesting with this upload. Note, support your local businesses. Player grave. Not only would it be odd for any character in Animal Crossing to die and receive a burial, but specifically a player raises some questions regarding this warped version of Animal Crossing. The note reads, "A random chance when mourning a player's grave. He's in a better place." Now, for those who aren't aware, Wild World is a multiplayer game, so a random event initiated by any interaction with another player isn't unusual. But the morbidness of a deceased player is an odd addition that multiplayer didn't support. But then we see this. The summary of a player named David's World. He's played for over a year and a half with the note of, "May he rest in peace." His final words were, "I don't want to go to heaven." As the video concludes, the words slowly fade to crosses, and David's face becomes hollowed. Church prayer. Note, plays during church service. The video features a visual of townsfolk gather within a church, as the town priest, Bell, asks for a moment of prayer. As the video continues, characters slowly begin to disappear until the church nearly empties. Suddenly, a bright light absorbs our screen and slowly brings this episode to a close. There's a quote in the description that reads, "To anybody who ascended last night, can you tell us if you got anything cool out of it, like some furniture or something?" This quote indicates that we may be witnessing what occurs directly before the mysterious Ascension event. However, there's something else I want to point out from this scene. If you look closely at the figures in the church, they aren't villagers or other Animal Crossing characters, but player models, further hinting at an alternate version of Animal Crossing Wild World with unusual and immersive multiplayer events. Ones that allowed many players to gather in churches and activate Ascension events, led by an unused priest named Bell. Goodbye note. Featuring one of the most melancholy tracks we've heard yet, the video showcases another new feature supported by Wild World's multiplayer mode, as one character can send a letter to another. "Dear James, it's time for me to go. I'm sorry I never told you, but it's going to be okay. We'll see each other soon. From Noah. The note in the description reads, short loop that plays in a letter from when another player quits the game. There's also a quote in the description stating, my brother quit playing the game yesterday and I got this fucked up letter sounding like he was gonna run away. When I asked him about it, he freaked out, insisting he didn't write it. I tried to press him on what happened and he just started to break down saying he was going to hell over and over again. There's a lot to unpack there, but I promise for the sake of this video, it'll be easier to move on and discuss this a little later. We'll touch more on this episode in a bit. White Fog SFX. The next upload takes a slight shift from the soundtracks and presents an undocumented sound effect of something called the White Fog. The description reads, a step up from the normal fog replaces in-game music. As you can expect, the White Fog is not a known event in Wild World, but I'm more intrigued by what the sound effect actually is. It almost sounds like heavy winds during a snowstorm, yet that sound wouldn't make much sense for a fog event, would it? As the fog moves closer, the effect grows louder, nearly muffled by its own volume. And if you listen closely, you might wonder if the sound could possibly be something else. Maybe even a scream. The video concludes with the title card saying Hello Forum and gives us a good hint regarding the contents of these videos' descriptions. See, every video has nearly the same formula. A notice that says tracks are taken from in-game recordings, a note, and occasionally a message in quotations. I believe the notes are direct messages from Sepia Tone, and the quotes are messages from users who posted these anomalies to forums. All quotes speak in the first person, and they relate directly to the video at hand. Considering the tracks are from in-game recordings, Sepia Tone likely discovered a forum discussing these obscure cutting room floor tracks. It included relevant notes within the video's description, further putting into question how documentation of these soundtracks are known to be found online, aside from the series. Nightly Visitor. Nightly Visitor isn't so much a track, but pure gameplay footage from a player's world. The description reads, note, what is the Nightly Visitor? The Nightly Visitor is essentially the Brutus of Animal Crossing Wild World, a figure rumored to hide in the shadows, taking the form of animals in your town. It is said to visit your town from around 11 p.m. to 4 a.m., roaming near the graveyard. On rare occasions, the Nightly Visitor may enter your house and rearrange the furniture in your living room. If the Nightly Visitor catches you, you will receive the highly elusive Game Over screen, but also lose all of your progress. No dialogue in the game has ever been found to even acknowledge its existence, let alone the graveyard it resides in. Despite the rumors, the Nightly Visitor doesn't kill you in real life. This is an urban legend perpetrated by others who are obviously still alive to post about it. Just a note for this description, Brutus was an old Animal Crossing urban legend of an evil villager who would move into your town if you logged off for too long, but his reference here isn't really too relevant to the story. At the start of the video, we get one frame of text that reads, "You can't move either," before cutting away. Notice that one of the players' beds are grayed out? We move down a floor, revealing a tiled room featuring a moon symbol, and continue down the staircase to the base level. Here we discover a collection of furniture and ornaments, most notably a portrait of Belle. In Wild World, players receive decorations from villagers after they've completed a specific quest or task for them, indicating our player completed something for Belle and was awarded with this portrait. We exit through the back door, oddly returning us to the opposite side of the same room, revealing a jingle. This sound holds much more significance than it may appear. A phone begins to ring and we run upstairs to answer, briefly presenting our town's name as Fairway Service Center, the same town that David belonged to. Considering that we're not David, what could have happened to the missing player? And could it be related to his bed now being grayed out? The phone continues to ring as we run back to the base level to discover that all of our furniture is gone. The background becomes much more distorted. Our player runs through an infinite loop of empty rooms as the quality of the game begins to drop and stutter. The jingle repeats more frequently, and a raspy gargle can be heard in the background. The nightly visitor has arrived. The screen slowly peels to reveal a phrase. I turned around and saw an angel.
Hi, this is an update video on the Animal Crossing videos I've been posting recently, or just in general. This is really hard for me to talk about because the entire thing weirds me out at this point, and I've been trying not to think about it. I never planned on talking about, using my voice to talk about these videos, but I don't want to just, make a community post saying, oh, sorry. I don't want to think about these videos anymore. When I uploaded that nightly visitor video, that wasn't I swear that wasn't the video that I found. I would have freaked out if there was gameplay footage and it looked like that, and that stuff happened. That would have been crazy. And then I wake up the next morning and it's that. I would have been too excited to just keep that to myself. I don't know what happened, I swear. I'm not gonna talk about the video. You can just watch the video, you can see it's still there. For some reason, all the videos are still there. I need to talk about the fact that I was like, okay, let me check my videos, right? None of them were there. This collection, I've been building a collection. I've been obsessively cataloging everything I could about this stuff, and it's just not there. So it's okay, my computer messed up, right? I'll just find the videos again. But I can't for the life of me find where I found them. They're just gone. It's all gone. It's it never happened. I look at my search history. It's not, it's I never even searched any of it. Obviously I had to have searched for it because the videos are on my channel. So I'm in general looking for any evidence that this even happened, and all I can see are people talking about the videos I uploaded and nothing before that. And it weirds me out really bad. So I kind of just, for the past week, I've kind of just been trying not to think about it, but I know that I'm gonna keep thinking about it if you guys are gonna
Something unusual is occurring, far beyond the mysterious elements of Wild World soundtracks. Sepiatone claims the nightly visitor video changed after being uploaded. It was apparently nowhere near the gameplay we witnessed, but somehow the video was different, and all of Sepiatone's discoveries were mysteriously gone. Perhaps the nightly visitor has more power than we may imagine. Jingle. And the video is just that. 7 seconds, no note in the description, just a jingle. The final video in this playlist. I've been promising it a lot, so let's finally take a look at what we've just covered and try to put together some sense to what this series actually means. So, there once existed a version of Animal Crossing Wild World that was much different than the one delivered to audiences back in 2005. Still featuring the same contents as the release game, this version had a collection of added unusual events, graveyard sceneries, bizarre death events, 2 characters in the form of Belle and the Nightly Visitor, a more immersive multiplayer, and access to the hidden waterfall entrance, an actual Wild World urban legend. Seamlessly blended into real life, Wild World quickly becomes the next every copy of Mario 64 is personalized, meaning that a certain collection of players remember aspects of the game much differently than what they turn out to be, leading to the theory that they may have gotten an alternate version of Wild World with different gameplay mechanics. This specific version also included odd religious ceremonies and something known as Ascension, featuring a disturbing reality where players can actually disappear and even die. We get a glimpse of this through David's world information when he... Well, that didn't happen last time. Let me tell you, when I say this series is genius and truly a refreshing addition to an oversaturated niche, I really mean it. The nature of what's going on here doesn't weigh nearly as much as it did when this series was actively releasing, and I'm envious of those who got the privilege of watching this in real time. Let me explain. If you search on YouTube right now for obscure Wild World OST, you'll only find fan re-uploads, but oddly nothing from Sepia Tone. However, it wasn't always like this. When the series first came out, Sepia Tone created a playlist for the obscure OST, and gradually started adding videos we've seen so far. Fans quickly accumulated as they realized the series was an ARG and would theorize amongst every upload. However, after Jingo released, and time passed, viewers would wait eagerly for the next installment of the series. However, nothing would come. The way it would just end like that, right? Well, that's absolutely right. The series wasn't over. However, Jingle still remains the final upload in the series. Not only chronologically, but also by date posted. So how is this possible? Well, because of the madman that Sepia Tone is, he created alternate versions of videos and uploaded them all around the same time the original video was posted, making one public and the others private. After Jingle was released, he readjusted which versions were private and which were public, all with the same titles, making it seem like it was the exact same upload, creating a ridiculously immersive experience for the viewers. Remember how Sepia Tone was terrified that an upload wasn't the same upload he remembered? Well, now the audience is watching the same uploads that aren't the same way that they remember. Goddamn, every copy of Wild World OST is now personalized. But what happened? What caused so many of these previous uploads to change? Well, what's the last thing that did happen? Maybe it has something to do with that. Player Grave 2. The next new upload comes from the clip we just witnessed, a revised version of Player Grave. Differences here remain minimal, as the only change comes in the form of David's face becoming a black cross instead of the hollowed out gyro face given in the previous version. Future uploads present much more significant changes, however. Player Grave. Again. We have yet another version of Player Grave. There's one aspect of this series that I'm unsure about, and it's how Player Grave entries were deployed, as, spoiler alert, there are many duplicate entries named Player Grave. I assume that Sepia Tone continued to private and unprivate the many entries, but doing so would impact the structure of the playlist during later videos, so I'm unsure, but it's not that relevant. The third Player Grave showcases a completely new Animal Crossing feature that utilizes the player microphone. The instructions simply read, "It's time to go. Please speak into the microphone." If you recall, we've seen reference to player's speech once before, in the form of David's final words. An unnerving statement that we can now infer was spoken directly into the microphone by the player in response to the screen. "I don't want to go to heaven." Goodbye Note 2. The second goodbye note features a muffled version of the Ascension soundtrack, with flickering text reading, "I don't want to go." With us knowing the microphone is used to capture players' last words, I don't believe the screen is glitching. I believe we're witnessing the transcript of a player's goodbye. "I don't want to go, I don't want to go, I don't want to go." The audio suddenly cuts, and the video ends in silence. Player Grave 3P. We again revert to the original concept of Player Grave. However, something unusual occurs. David appears to talk directly to the player. Using phrases like, "don't close the menu," it seems as if David is pleading to the person recording the footage, trying to take advantage of a brief window into reality as he speaks to the player. He cries, "I don't want to be here. It's too bright. I want to go home. Please don't leave me." David oddly doesn't beg to be saved or scream of torture. All he wants is just a few more minutes with another person. All he wants is to not be alone. White Fog SFX 2. There isn't too much to discuss about this upload right now, aside from a more disturbing upgrade from the previous White Fog sound effect. We'll touch back on this later in the video. Waterfall Dungeon. A completely new title and upload to the series, Waterfall Dungeon continues from the brief title card we see at the end of Waterfall Room, explaining how to access the hidden waterfall temple that many players theorize existed in the mid-2000s. According to the tutorial, players must locate 4 rocks around the island that activate our beloved jingle sound effect. Doing so will spawn a pathway needed to traverse the water and reach the waterfall, discovering an entrance leading to the Waterfall Room. Inside lies the same room we see in the player's home, however the entrance by the moon statue is sealed, blocking the entrance to the dungeon. The player has not yet figured out how to get inside. The video has no description. Player grave, again times 4. This player grave is actually very simple, just the painting of a bright blue sky. The soundtrack is surprisingly peaceful. Player grave, number 6. The 6th and final player grave revisits David with the cross-decorated face, as we read what appears to be only half a conversation. From what I can interpret, I believe this to be David long after his ascension, or possibly somebody pretending to be David, as he speaks as someone who is freshly ascended, likely the person who shared a world with David from Nightly Visitor. I'm going to try my best to fill in this conversation, but just know that all text in red is non-canon, messages theorized from me. Where am I? You're in hell. You all are. What was that? It's an angel. How do you know this isn't heaven? He told me I was in hell. I remember you. You're lying. Nobody remembers me. The player then begins to cry. Don't cry. Hell will forget about you too. And in a few short frames, the video concludes with the same blissful sky we see in the episode prior. I want to talk about this episode a little more in depth, as it's still uncertain who this player actually is. He takes the form of David, albeit with an altered face, but appears to take the role of a Sharon, an iconic ferryman in the afterlife who guides sinners to their place in hell. Whether this is actually David or merely symbolized by David is unknown. He answers the questions of someone recently ascended and informs the player that everybody's in hell. Oddly though, hell has an unusual depiction, looking how you may imagine heaven to actually look. It's hard to make any certain theories about this upload as half the conversation was inferred, but for now, we can conclude that an angel brought a player to hell, and the player whose gameplay we follow has likely recently ascended and is confronting the weight of his new reality. Nightly Visitor SFX. Nightly Visitor SFX is as literal as it sounds. It showcases the sound effects related to the Nightly Visitor and gives a clearer depiction as to who this character was and what he was capable of. Eating, growling, speaking, disappearing, changing. The video describes him as a monster that can visit your house from 11 p.m. to 4 a.m. and can rearrange the furniture in your house and even kill you. Needless to say, some of the sound effects that occur are disturbing. The video's description raises even more interest, as it reads, "I'd like to break this vague character I've been playing into for these descriptions to voice my confusion about this entire thing. These past few months I've been obsessively scrounging up as much info as I can, and it's only left me more and more confused. There's more than one person behind this stuff. It's an entire community of people doing one big inside joke, and it actually kind of weirds me out how nobody's ever talked about it. I personally thought the Nightly Visitor was some kind of cosmic entity character, but these people kind of mention it like it was just a feature. Like, yeah, there's just a part of the game where you can die, and also there's an evil monster that kills people. It's not just this one thing either. It'd make sense if it was just a weird inside joke that didn't take off, but it's like they're playing an entirely different game. I mean, like in-depth, pages-long strategy guides on shit like Waterfall Dungeon Level 5, Halloween Furniture Guide, Successful Villager Prayers, How to Escape the Visitor. They're just countless discussions about these features that don't exist, and nobody calls them out. It's really late for me, and I'll probably share more tomorrow when my head's on straight. Thank you for being patient." The description suggests that Sepia Tone was skeptical of the whole nightly visitor legend, treating every upload just as we had. Creepy, but obviously fake. However, as he began to research more, he discovered more and more people playing into the facade that these urban legends were real. So much so that it genuinely disturbed Sepia Tone, which leads us to the next upload in this playlist. One that has no title. We get treated to yet another beautiful blue sky painting. Yet those with a keen eye will notice it's slightly different. We then get one final re-upload of Jingle. Thus bringing the series of the obscure Wild World OST to a close. So let's start at the beginning. Let's break down everything we saw and finally make some sense as to what this is, who Belle and the Nightly Visitor are, and what happened to the players of Wild World. So, 2005. Oh, 2005, a time of ignorance and bliss. A time where we'd believe anything we see online came with the release of Animal Crossing Wild World for the Nintendo DS. As its fandom grew, wild urban legends began to spread about secrets within the game. Rare scorpion events, unique characters named Belle and the Nightly Visitor, and of course the infamous hidden passage behind the waterfall. We all know now that these are fake and just another myth behind the wall of Nintendo should have been content, but what if I tell you it wasn't? What if I tell you that everything that players theorized turned out to be 100% real? See, there's this rumor that if you explore the island and interact with a small selection of randomly generated stones, you'll hear this bell. Interact with 4 stones, and a bridge will be constructed leading our player to the entrance of the mysterious waterfall dungeon, inaccessible by a locked entrance. Return to town and you'll be introduced to a new villager named Belle, a priest who grants our player access to a town church beside a graveyard. Belle tasks our player to summon the Nightly Visitor, a series of objectives that ultimately concludes with removing the crescent statue by the waterfall entrance and completing the inside dungeon. Doing so awards our player with Belle's portrait, but after, weird anomalies begin to occur throughout the village. A mysterious fog rolls in, suddenly causing all of the villagers to disappear. The only remaining villager is Belle, who informs you of what happened. They've all ascended. A miraculous event that allows the peaceful members of your village to enter the kingdom of heaven and eternal paradise. An opportunity that will welcome the players soon enough. This event also happens to be a multiplayer event, allowing all the players who completed Belle's task to gather together in the church and pray as they await the Nightly Visitor. Oddly though, a goodbye note gets sent to all of your friends a day prior, stating it's your time to go, whether you attend this event or not. Those who do attend begin to disappear, ascending as we would presume, as we watch the gameplay through David's POV. Suddenly, his screen fills with light, prepared to witness the remarkable glory of Heaven's Gate, when the music suddenly stops and a single message appears on screen. It's time to go. Please speak into the microphone. But something doesn't feel right. An unnerving chill falls down your spine as you suddenly feel like you're not alone. Strands of long gray hair fall over your shoulders as if to gesture. What are you looking at? He wants you to turn around. And when you finally do, you see him. The Nightly Visitor. An angel. His arms hug the wall, holes where his eyes should be, burrowed into the back of his skull. Long black hair slowly filling your face as he places his hand on your shoulders in perfect timing, with breath that could melt skin. He approaches closer. All you can do is muddle out one final sentence. I don't want to go to heaven. And then, suddenly, sky. Beautiful blue sky. It's surprisingly peaceful. You take a breath, somewhat relieved, before you notice, where is everybody? As days pass and you remain suspended in eternal paradise of nothingness, the reality of your fate begins to settle in. You will be here, alone, forever. After the ascension, the nightly visitor proceeds to tie up all loose ends. For some reason, he doesn't want to be remembered. He's gotten his fill, and wants all recollection of his existence to disappear with the souls he reaped. Players who summon the visitor get taken regardless. Tutorials on how to access the waterfall temple mysteriously disappear, and any documentation or discussion of these obscure elements and soundtracks get wiped from existence, forever remaining as vague recollections, assumed to be urban legend in the Wild World community. That is until Sepiatone mysteriously discovered a crack in the nightly visitor's digital cleansing. Somehow, Sepiatone discovered a forum where there was actual documentation of the remnants left behind from the nightly visitor's purge. Soundtracks, sound effects, and brief visuals still documented on live forums, unable to be found today. He began to document his findings on YouTube, skeptical of the whole thing as a very elaborate creepypasta and playing into the role of a frightened investigator for theatrics, until he began to notice an unusual amount of users claiming that all of the legends were real, and not even acting like these discoveries were unusual. He eventually uploaded a video titled Nightly Visitor, only to discover the actual published upload was much different than the one he remembered. He investigated, only to discover that previous uploads were also missing. Research he compiled for months, suddenly gone, and forums that once held lost media disappeared. In the video in which he explains this, there was a few more seconds to the upload that was omitted from this video's viewing. I'd like to show them to you now.
Because the videos are on my channel. So I'm like, in general, looking for any evidence that this even happened, and all I can see are people talking about the videos I uploaded and nothing before that. And it weirds me out like really bad. So I kind of just, for the past week, I've kind of just been trying not to think about it, but I know that I'm gonna keep thinking about it if you guys are gonna like think about it. And I don't want to just like leave you hanging or anything, so I'm just telling you right now that I guess it's over. I don't know what this is. I don't know what just happened.
It appears that Sepiatone discovered too much. He brought light to discoveries that should never have been made public, and met a grueling fate with the nightly visitor. One that was welcomed by one sight. I believe the final painting to represent Sepiatone's heaven, an empty paradise that he will forever have the pleasure of enjoying alone. Many theories conclude around this point. However, there's different interpretations as to what this ending and the painting truly mean. I personally believe that everybody entered their own heaven, so to say, which is why the two paintings are different. But the reality of what heaven is vastly misunderstood. People have this unwavering interpretation that heaven is a paradise in the clouds and hell is a fiery torture. But in reality, all that these are titles for unbased beliefs. Wherever or whatever this is may look like a heaven, but the reality of it is, no one knows what a heaven would even be like if one exists. And when you realize that a life lost in an endless abyss for all of eternity to be heaven, well then, heaven and hell don't seem much different, do they? After this, the bell chimed and all of Sepiatone's uploads and discoveries were returned to obscurity, hence the removal from public viewing. However, if you look at Sepiatone's channel, there is still one Animal Crossing upload that remains, and it really doesn't make much sense.
Hi, this is Sepiatone. I'm making an update video about the Animal Crossing Let's Play I've been doing for the past couple of months. There should be some gameplay on screen of the game I'm talking about right now. I was planning on doing a full year of gameplay, recording, editing, and uploading every single day, but I've quickly grown bored and a little bit burnt out of the entire process, and I don't think the ends are worth the means. So I've decided to not lead anybody on. I've decided to unlist all of those videos and put them in a playlist down below. I'm not sure if I'm going to do any Let's Plays anytime in the future. I'm not really much of a Let's Player anyways. I'm probably going to do more creative projects in the future. Something that takes a little bit more effort than just like playing Animal Crossing. Thank you for your time. This was just a quick little update. Thank you for watching.
Sepia Tone oddly references a collection of daily Animal Crossing uploads that simply never existed. Not even referencing the obscure Wild World OST, Sepia Tone expresses his burnout of daily Let's Play videos and informs the audience that he'll be taking a break indefinitely, which gives me another idea for the significance of this painting. The gameplay shown on screen isn't even Wild World, but Animal Crossing for the GameCube, another odd anomaly from this upload. From what we theorize about the Nightly Visitor, he can only be summoned after accessing the Water Temple, thus triggering the Ascension event. So it kinda doesn't make sense that the entity could randomly chime away Sepia Tone at his will. However, he also is an angel who has the ability to basically kill people and turn forms and videos into lost media, so I guess that assumption does have some leeway. But if we do assume that someone couldn't ascend without performing this event, then something must have happened to grant the Nightly Visitor access to Sepia Tone. So let's think about this. What if all these Let's Play videos actually existed? Dozens of videos, including Sepia Tone's discovery of a way to activate the Ascension event in a different Animal Crossing game. Animal Crossing for the GameCube. He summons the Nightly Visitor, gets ascended, and gets access to heaven that looks slightly different because it's a different game, also explaining the slightly different chime. Then, just like Wild World, poof, vamoose, everything's gone. All documentation, all Let's Plays, an entire series now removed from reality, leaving just one confusing upload. A third theory that I do enjoy is, judging by the painting's slightly higher quality, this is indicated that the Nightly Visitor lives amongst the next Animal Crossing game, City Folk for the Wii. This doesn't necessarily tie in with Sepia Tone, but does leave behind a somewhat ominous, open-ended conclusion. Sepia Tone truly outdid himself with this series, and I have to go through many unfiction ARGs to make content for this channel, and brutally, I sometimes have to talk about some pretty terrible projects, not naming names. But Sepia Tone managed to create an immersive experience that basically places viewers into the story it was creating. Truly the epitome of an ARG, and I give Sepia Tone my biggest praise. Amazing work. Hey guys, you guys made it far. What was the video, like an hour 50? Are you still watching, or am I just playing on your TV in the middle of the night? You got cats? Wow. Anyways, if you like this video, you'd love this one, Teeny Toys. It's a story about a player's favorite childhood MMO being reopened. However, upon exploration, things seem a little too personal. Too much to be a coincidence. I think you'd really like it, and I hope you enjoy.